And we now welcome in the new head coach at Xavier. He is Richard Pitino. Richard, welcome. How would you describe the last 5 weeks?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, every time you take a new job, it's a lot. The difference is you're not necessarily traveling as much, but a lot of people are coming to see you. But yeah, we signed 11 guys and inherited one player who didn't play last year. But it's just one of those deals, and but it's been great to meet a lot of new people. Xavier's got a lot of support, and trying to build a roster, trying to build a staff, trying to meet as many of the supporters as I possibly can right now. But all good problems to have.
How would you describe taking over a new program in this current climate?
I think people think it's easier to flip a roster than it really is. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying it's impossible, but in my mind, the goal would be to you know, build a roster and then retain some guys. If you
Okay.
looked at our team last year in New Mexico, Donovan Dent, True Washington, Mustafa Amzil, Nelly Jr. Joseph were all retained. Our goal was to identify with guys certainly that can help us now, but can build around. I know it's year to year, but in more of maybe not necessarily the oldest school model, but a little bit older school for the future.
Now, you were courted by several power conference programs at the end of last season. Why did Xavier stand out when you were making a choice to leave New Mexico?
Well, for one, I loved New Mexico. I wasn't necessarily looking to leave. I thought the Big East in this kind of new world order that we have is in a position of strength. Now, who knows where it all evolves into? I don't think any of us know, but um, you're having to share so much of the resources with football,
Right.
and not that I don't like sharing, but I just felt like the Big East has an opportunity here whenever this House settlement passes, if it does pass, to where we're going to have some resources at our disposal. I think this year is totally different. People are spending astronomical amounts of money um, to try to do it before the House settlement passes. Where I just think if you can get a Big East job, if this all evolves into what it can, it makes a lot of sense. I felt comfortable. I went to a private Catholic school, Providence College. It gets me closer to my family in the East. And it felt right in a lot of ways.
What was your perception of the Xavier job when you were growing up in the business?
Well, it's always been one that they've kept in house.
Right.
So I never really thought this was going to be like a viable option. Certainly, if they wanted to talk, I would have listened to them. But when Sean took Texas, I figured it would be somebody in that tree in that family. And when I got the call, really, really excited about it. I think the biggest thing is they've had a history of success
Mhm.
that spans over many, many coaches. Um, but we also need to know too, the last 3 years, it's become a new profession as well. But you always want to be at a place that has done something that I'm trying to do. I don't want to be the only one to try to win at Xavier. And certainly you can look at so many great coaches who have done it here.
Now, when you were 30, you were named the head coach at Minnesota after just 1 year of head coaching experience at FIU. I'm curious, how much more prepared are you now to lead a power conference program than when you took over Minnesota at age 30?
Um, Yeah, I think I was ready to coach at Minnesota. It's all the other things that I had no idea about. And I think when you go to places like Minnesota and Xavier and New Mexico, you have to improve the job. Not to say that Xavier like is not a good job, but there's so many things resource wise that I've got to be able to rally troops together. And I think in Minnesota, I wasn't ready for that.
Mhm.
At the time, we didn't have a practice facility, we didn't have the resources to do it. Um, where I now see, after being a head coach for 13 years, maybe I can provide a different perspective to the Xavier people who have not seen that and say, hey, like, in order to compete at the highest level, this is what we need to do. So I think it's running a program. I think it's hiring a staff, putting together a team is where I'm probably way more advanced than I was when I first started in Minnesota.
How did you change as a head coach during your time in New Mexico?
Um, stylistically, we played faster. We didn't do that in the Big Ten, um, but not as much as you would think, honestly. I think I relinquished control a little bit more,
Mhm.
empowered my staff a little bit more. I think when you first start as a young head coach at 30 years old, you try to prove yourself. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going against Tom Izzo, and I want to show that I'm just as good of a coach as him, or Bo Ryan, or Matt Painter. Like, I don't care about that anymore. I just care about that game in front of us. Can we win it? Can we build a championship team? So I would say it's not necessarily an out of bounds play or playing faster. It's more just putting together the whole program, communicating with my staff, and letting them work. Why hire these guys if you're going to not let them do their job? So I've done a much better job of that.
Richard, the Mountain West the last couple of years got a number of teams into the NCAA tournament, and there was great bid representation from that conference. But things are obviously changing in the next couple of years with that league and the start of the new Pac-12. How much more reassuring is it for you moving forward to now have a plethora of quad one opportunities at your disposal in your own league?
I was concerned about that from a New Mexico perspective. And I know Fernando Lovo, their AD, and all the people there, they really care about basketball. So although they had been left behind with the new Pac 12, they're going to be super aggressive. But yeah, that was a concern. I didn't want to evolve into a one bid league. It's just too hard, because you could go out of Hawaii and you can lose, and it could, I don't know how good Hawaii's going to be, but that could really hurt your
Sure.
resume. And I didn't want to be in that situation where you lose a game on the road and all of a sudden you're done. It's this thing is really separating. The haves are really separating from the have-nots, and it's just there are great opportunities out there. Scary times, but there's great opportunities. So I wanted to be in a stable conference like the Big East, and you've got so many programs. Whether it's UConn, I mean St. John's, those are programs that are trying to win a national
Yes.
championship, and it's good for all of us to invest. There's never been a time where investment shows you how committed you are to winning. And this league is certainly invested.
Well, the Big East is obviously a basketball conference. It's always been a basketball conference. You were in the league as a student at Providence College. I know you spent a lot of time preparing for a career in basketball when you were an undergraduate. And you also were a part of a team in the old Big East at Louisville when you were an assistant that went to the Final Four in 2012. What does it mean for you specifically to now be a Big East head coach?
Yeah, a lot. I loved my time in New Mexico, but I'm not a West Coast guy. I don't have West Coast roots. My family is not out there. So now to be able to, you know, talk to my family about the Big East tournament. Obviously, my dad's the head coach of St. John's, but hey, you coming to the game at the Garden? Hey, you able to go to the Villanova game? Like,
Right.
those things. I mean, obviously, I have a family of my own, but as your parents are getting older, and
Yeah.
you want to be around that. And some of my coolest memories were whether it was at Providence College or going to the Garden for the Big East tournament.
Yeah.
As an assistant coach, beating Syracuse to win the Big East tournament. So,
Yeah.
I'm a Northeasterner through and through. I spent a lot of great years, whether it was in Minnesota, New Mexico, Florida, but as a Northeast kid, to be able to coach in the Big East is a dream come true.
And everybody is going to ask you in every interview that you do, what's it going to be like going against your father? So I refuse to do that in this conversation. But I am curious about this. You are now in the same league as your alma mater, Providence College. What is it going to be like for you emotionally to have to coach against the Friars at least 2 times per season?
Yeah, I don't get real emotional in any of the games, whether it's playing my dad, whether it's playing at Providence College or whatever. Like for me, I understand what my job is. My job is to go do my very, very best to win and to build a sustainable championship program. And it doesn't matter who we play. I'm not looking down there at the other sideline. I'm not. I'm just worried about Xavier with every game that we play. So I've had amazing memories, whether it's at Providence College as a student. My dad, obviously coaching there in 1987. I mean, that's a special place to me. I appreciate it. It shaped me. I've got great friends who I still know who went there and keep in touch with, but it doesn't matter who we play. We're going to try to win every game.
Richard, you are the only one of your brothers who got into coaching. You obviously come from a big family and a family with great basketball lineage. When did you decide this is what you wanted to do?
At Providence College, I used to work coming out of high school basketball camps and met a guy by the name of Mike Hart, who's a legendary prep school coach over there in Barrington, Rhode Island. And he offered me a job as a volunteer assistant for my first 2 years, freshman and sophomore year of college, where all the other students were out partying and getting drunk. Not me. I was in the gym. I may have done that from time to time. But for me, it was that's where I got the bug. And then I met Coach Tim Welsh, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come be a student assistant? You can do film and do a little bit of whatever." And then I just kind of hit the ground running from there, and been lucky. I mean, a guy like Bob Walsh helps me get College of Charleston, and then years later, I'm able to help him get St. John's. Like that's huge. That's what this business is all about.
No, it's definitely what it's all about. You talk about coaching trees. Obviously, nobody has a more successful coaching tree than your father, who, as you mentioned, is the head coach at St. John's. Two of his former assistants, you and now Kevin Willard of Villanova, are going to be part of the 11 head coaches in the Big East. I'm curious from this perspective, why do you think your father was able to mold so many successful head coaches?
He puts the effort into molding us. Some coaches just hire assistant coaches and say, "Hey, get me players." You're not a coach, you're a recruiter. My dad is not that way. So he identifies with people that he believes will be future head coaches, and he pushes them. Anybody that works for my dad and his program, you are going to be driven to succeed just as much as the best player. So, he's not walking in and just saying, "Oh, go on the road and get me players." He's going to be invested in you as a future leader. So, it's a fraternity and a family that us coaches, obviously I'm his son, but we're really, really proud of that. And, we're honored to have learned from him. And, when we coach, we know we represent him, and we're trying to win at a high level and do it the right way.
Now, I know that he obviously had a major impact on your career and obviously how you coach, but I also know that the time that you spent as an assistant under Billy Donovan in Florida was extremely, extremely critical in your development as a head coach. What are the biggest things that you took from Billy that you've implemented with your own teams?
Yeah, I mean, when I went to work for Coach Donovan, I thought he'd be exactly like my dad, and he's not. Now, they're both driven by the same things. They want to win national championships and want to put players in the NBA, and they want to, have assistants go be head coaches, and they're both very, very loyal to the people who work for them, but they just did it in a different way. And I remember spending about a month in Coach Donovan's program and being like, "You know what? If I ever get my opportunity, I'm going to do what I feel comfortable doing and how I feel I should run the program. Don't try to be my dad. Don't try to be Billy Donovan. No, like be yourself." So it really shaped me in a huge way, and it gave me the confidence that I could do it my way moving forward.
Well, and you look at your way moving forward, and you've had to put together a brand new team here at Xavier. I know this is only May, but I'm curious right now, what's your impressions of the roster you've put together with the Musketeers?
I mean, I think we certainly, when you take a job in today's landscape, you're almost always going to start over. Rarely you can inherit a bunch of players anymore. It's just kind of the environment that we're in. So to have to add so many players, to have one player returning in a Roddy Anderson who we really like, but he didn't even play last year. I knew him from my time in the Mountain West. It's we did our very best. Then you've got the NIL component of how much money you can spend and all those things. And this year, more than ever, it's been so inflated because everybody's trying to spend as much as they possibly can before the house settlement goes in. Right. So I think with, what we were provided with, I think we did a really, really good job and worked very hard. What I don't know is chemistry. What I don't know is the DNA and the makeup of these guys. You do your very best, but um, I don't want 11, 12 new guys every year. I'm really going to try to build a program on retention as best I can, but also with the understanding that this environment is going to create a lot of that as well.
Well, that brings me to my next point because I remember being with you and your New Mexico team in Cleveland during the NCAA tournament. And one of the main things we talked about was the team had so much retention from the team that went to the NCAA tournament the year prior. And that was a big, big part of your success. We spend so much time focused on who people are getting in April and May. But from a head coach's perspective, why is who people are retaining in March and April probably more important?
Yeah, I mean, you look at like St. John's last year, Zuby, R.J. Luis. I mean, guys like that who are in the program. They won as many games as the Kadari Richmonds and so on of the world.
Yeah.
And you got to find a way to get old and stay old. The really hard thing to figure out is high school recruiting and how much do you spend that time on it because we're so accustomed to it going on the road. But yeah, I look at it as 2 years. I don't know if I look at it as 4 years anymore, but
Mhm.
can we sign these guys and get 2 years out of them is huge. And we were able to do it with the Donovan Dent, who was player of the year in the league, Nelly Jr. Joseph, True Washington, Mustafa Amzil. So, you know, will I be able to keep everybody for 4 years? I don't know. That might be really, really hard. I wish I could. But yes, if you can get them to taste success early, want to come back and win a Big East championship for Xavier, that is huge. And that was a huge motivation for my team last year in New Mexico.
One of the things that comes with being the Xavier head coach is being a part of one of the great rivalries in college basketball, and that's the Crosstown Shootout with Cincinnati. I know you followed this as somebody who has a great reverence for the sport, but I'm curious your perception from the periphery of the Crosstown Shootout.
I know it's important to our fans. That I do know, and I know it's important to Cincinnati's fans. I've been reminded over and over again, like, yeah, we want to get to the NCAA tournament, but let's make sure we win that crosstown shootout as well.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I mean, the fact that you have a city, we do have pro sports, obviously, whether it's the Bengals, whether it's the Reds. We have a professional soccer team as well. But you don't have any pro NBA teams in the area. So, wintertime, UC obviously has their contingent of people who love their team, and Xavier's got theirs. So it is bitter. It's a big deal, and certainly we got a lot of work to do. But we know whatever date that game is played, we better be ready because we have a responsibility to our former players, to our supporters, and to our fan base.
Crosstown Shootout is obviously the major marquee non-conference game for Xavier every single year. Next year, already on the books, you're going to be in Charleston. You're going to play 2 games against power conference teams. You're going to play at Iowa. Is there anything else of significance for the Musketeers in November and December?
Oh, we're trying to put it all together right now. I'm not breaking it to you on this if that's what you're asking me. I'll get in trouble for that. I always say this: the schedule will grow as the program grows, and we always want to be aggressive. You look at my team last year in New Mexico, played UCLA, USC, Arizona State, at St. John's, and we're going to continue to do that as well. I think this year certainly when you only inherit one guy, you're trying to figure it out. But at Iowa will be very difficult. Charleston will be a great MTE. Crosstown Shootout is always phenomenal. And then you got to kind of put together a home slate the best that you can as well.
Richard, you had referenced Donovan Dent a couple of times in this chat, and he obviously has since committed to UCLA as a transfer. And you and he were a part of a New Mexico team that beat UCLA last season in Las Vegas. And if you look at UCLA's team last year, they really, really lacked a consistent option at point guard. I'm curious because you've been so well versed as an analyst during your time chiming in on the media, just your impressions on how Donovan Dent would blend with UCLA.
I don't know the rest of their roster, so it'd be really hard for me to say this. What I do know is he's one of the best passers in the country. He's one of the best finishers out there. He's a phenomenal person. I think the environment of being back home, near his family will, he's a California kid. The fact that I was able to get him to survive in Albuquerque for 3 years, those Cali kids like to be close to home. Um, but he makes everybody better. He's like a great quarterback who just finds receivers. So without knowing the rest of their roster, I know Mick does an amazing job, and especially in recruiting. So I know he'll have some weapons around him like he did with us. And when you put some really good players around Donovan Dent, he's going to make them better.
Yeah, no, he'll be one of the best players in the country next season, without question. And, Richard, I know it's really, really tough to think this way when you're still obviously, weeks away from getting everybody that you signed on campus. But regardless of wins and losses, what are your year one goals for you at Xavier?
Well, at a place like Xavier, I want to compete for conference championships. If you're winning a conference championship, it puts you in a position to get a great seed in the NCAA tournament. We all want Final Fours and all that, but my kind of singular focus is to build a Big East championship team. That will put us in an unbelievable position moving forward with all the other things. And as we know in this conference, you've got some teams that are trying to win a national championship. We want to build Xavier to that program. I believe Xavier has the most NCAA tournament wins of any team who hasn't been to a Final Four. Obviously, we want to change that, but we're in this new world, in this new profession where, we've got to certainly battle with the big dogs in our conference. And we want to do that. We feel like this place has got such a storied tradition. They've won. They've got great players who've come into this program. So, the singular focus on a daily basis will be to get better. But we want to build a championship contender.
I know it's only been a little bit more than a month since you've been at Xavier, but even in that time span, have you noticed the difference being at a non-football school versus being at a football school like you were when you were at Minnesota?
Well, I think right now, unfortunately, NIL is the most important thing as it pertains to building a roster. It just is. And as I said before, my concern at a place like New Mexico, maybe not this year, but whenever rules are put into place, hopefully sooner than later, there will be caps and now all of a sudden you're going to have to figure out who's spending money and who's not. So I think a lot of people are spending exorbitant amounts of money right now. I do think this thing is I hope it levels off. Not that I don't want the players to make money, but just so we can have somewhat of a level playing field moving forward. But what I can tell you is when I walk in every day, the amount of support within the department that we get for Xavier men's basketball, and they certainly support all the other programs as well. It's just we just don't have, when you don't have football, it's like all hands are on deck for that men's basketball program, and that's been a welcome sight, and they want us to win, and I can certainly feel that.
Now, one of the great things, too, about living in Cincinnati is the access you have to Grers Ice Cream. How many nights per week will you allow your kids to experience that?
Well, they're still in New Mexico, but I will say when they were here, when I got the job, I think it was 3 nights in a row, we found ourselves at Graders. I'm surprised that I had spent some time in Cincinnati, but it's a foodie city. I mean, it's not where you live, but they've got great restaurants, and they've got a lot of pride in it. So it's been a really fun couple of weeks, and I'm excited to get my family here and really settle down here.
Richard, appreciate the time. Congratulations on the job. Thrilled for your success, and as always, look forward to staying connected along the way.
All right, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
You got Xavier head coach Richard Pitino. I'm John Rothstein, reminding you to comment and please subscribe on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page.